Welcome into Surviving Paradise, the podcast that takes a sometimes serious, oftentimes humorous look at the claim by Jehovah's Witness leadership that they are living in a modern-day spiritual paradise. I am your host, Stacy Bauman, former elder, ministerial servant, little guy raised as a witness in the 70s and 80s. And as I do, just a warning, we like to have some fun. We have laughs, we have tears, we're trying to heal. No matter where you are on this journey, please note, nothing said here is ever meant to offend. As I do, a big thank you for all the comments and DMs I receive on this show. I try really hard to answer all of them, and I know I fail to do it. Please accept my apology. It is not personal. It's just very overwhelming at times, which is a good thing, and I really, really appreciate the comments. But my sincere apologies if I ever miss anything. I'm kind of on the run this week. I'm traveling. I travel a lot, and I'm making direct communication challenging right now. If you're trying to get in touch with me, please note that. I do appreciate the notes. I truly try to read each one of those. I really want everybody to know that, and I hope that you'll keep the feedback coming. Okay, got that out of the way. I will say this is going to ramble, because during my travels this week, I've just had a lot of thoughts on this subject. I'm not sure why. Nothing particularly triggered it. But there are a few subjects I get more questions on than all things congregation elders. Ah, yes, the elders. Lots of emotions when you use that word for Jehovah's Witnesses. They're so popular in most cases. For those not in the know, each congregation of Jehovah's Witnesses features a body of elders, and they run the show at the local level. They have all the authority. And while the organization portrays them as meek, humble, brave shepherds who are passionate and loving towards all of their sheep and their sheep's well-being, well, life experience will tell you it doesn't always seem that way. They're not really that way in most cases. And so I'm starting off by being negative. But it's the truth. It's the truth. In the brochure, Who Are Doing Jehovah's Will Today? Lesson 15, How Do the Elders Serve the Congregation? On page 18, we are told the following, quote, "The elders are spiritually mature men who take the lead in the congregation and shepherd, not under compulsion, but willingly before God, not for love of dishonest gain, but eagerly." End quote. Yes, they're very eager. They're always looking out for your best interests. Just listen to what the governing body has to say about the congregation elder arrangement. And as of the announcements of January 15th, 2025, a, quote, spiritually mature man, as quoted there in 1 Peter 5, well, a spiritually mature man can now be a Jehovah's Witness congregation elder at the ripe age of 21 years old. Very mature indeed. Wouldn't you agree? I know I was really mature at 21. The age of, a typical third-year college student, but armed with all kinds of life experience and knowledge. I was 21. You see, at that age, I, as well as new elders, were equipped to counsel married couples. Even though we'd never been married, we were equipped to speak on women's delicate issues. Even though we'd never been with one, we were spiritually mature enough to handle serious crimes and speak to the challenges of old age for some in the congregation in our 20s. I myself am chucking myself under the proverbial bus. I was living proof of 1 Peter chapter 5. I was a really spiritually mature man when I was appointed at 27. And look, I'd be a vet now. I'd be an old guy. They're appointing them at 21. So for that reason, I see no problem in a 21-year-old man being an elder who also might be a virgin. He's never been with a woman, never been married, doesn't understand marriage, and can finally buy himself a beer here in the United States. I'm all kinds of okay with that guy giving me direction on how I should be living my life. Won't you agree? Don't you agree? I'm sure a 21-year-old elder of Jehovah's Witnesses will be very clutch if someone is facing a blood transfusion, or a woman just discovered her husband is sleeping with her sister, or any number of other very complex problems. But as of 5 months ago, Jesus sent the message to the governing body to start appointing 21-year-old boys, sorry about that, men, to shepherd his sheep during these all-important demonic last days. But often lost in 1 Peter 5 is the thought that no male, by the way, ladies, if you're new to Jehovah's Witnesses, need not apply for eldership. You're not allowed. It's a boys' club. That no male would ever want a position of power for, as 1 Peter 5 says, dishonest gain, right? No, not at 21. That's why they play video games. And I think I speak for every Jehovah's Witness when I say that elders always show how eager they are to help, right? Wouldn't you agree? You may be dealing with crippling depression, but in the old days, that didn't stop them from calling you after not talking to you for months just to get your field service time so that you can stay as an active publisher, even if they hadn't seen you at a meeting for months. The phone call still came every time last week of the month. That was their example of how they were eagerly taking care of you, according to 1 Peter chapter 5. The Jehovah's Witness elder arrangement gets a lot of play in this modern-day spiritual paradise. There are a few good ones. I want to get it out of the way right now. There are a few really good guys that take this job seriously, guys that care, guys that cry, guys that hold hands, guys that do the job of a shepherd. There are a few good ones. But I'm here to tell you there are a lot of bad ones. And that's a fact. See my past episodes on the elders and how they fail to do their job. There's lots to say about it. And yeah, I'm being blunt and I'm taking no prisoners on this subject. I guess I'm in the mood. Sure. Another disclaimer. They're imperfect men tasked with doing an impossible job. But they continue to be propped up as superheroes whose every word should be obeyed and clung to if you're a Jehovah's Witness. The organization calls congregation elders earthly princes. They're royalty. That guy who, can't seem to put down the third donut and might have some trouble with alcohol is the same guy who's going to tell you how to live your life. And by the way, he's a prince. And speaking of modern-day elders, with little effort, a person can find countless references in the Watchtower library of them being referred to those princes. They're in there. But how about a couple of references? From the Watchtower of January 15th, 1979, page 22, we are told, quote, "What a grand privilege that will be. These princes from among the great crowd will be joined by others in official service for the forefathers of Jesus Christ and other faithful men, from Abel to John the Baptizer, will be resurrected and be made his princely representatives." End quote. From another favorite, the Worldwide Security Under the Prince of Peace book, page 167, witnesses are told, quote, "But even before the resurrection of those faithful forefathers, male members of the great crowd of Armageddon survivors will have been appointed to such princely office. thousands of these prospective survivors of Armageddon are already serving as elders in the more than 49,000 congregations of Jehovah's Witnesses. Superintending, end quote for a moment. Sounds a lot like shepherding, right? Very gentle, but they use the word, quote, superintending the spiritual interests of their respective congregations, end quote. Elders, they're called princes, and they're compared to Moses. They're compared to King David. And yep, they're compared to one guy that is a superhero, my guy Noah. In fact, they will apparently serve shoulder to shoulder with these guys on the paradise earth. You heard it right there in the January 15th, 1979 Watchtower. And can you imagine those conversations, by the way? I know, my brain. Just imagine those conversations during their first princely elder meeting on a paradise earth. I can hear it now. Quote, "Hey, David, tell me about slinging that rock at Goliath. The guy was a giant. Did you have to aim your shot, or did you just say a prayer and the rock just flew into his forehead? How hard was it to date and get married in your day, King David? I mean, I thought we had it hard with chaperones and stuff, but what did you have to deal with?" I imagine King David smiling and opening up the Bible right on the spot. Yep, yeah, they'll still be reading the Bible in paradise, apparently, according to the governing body. And David then turning and answering by reading this from 1 Samuel 18, 26 and 27 of the New World Translation. David will say, "Well, looky here, brother, fellow prince." It says, quote, "So his servants reported these words to David, and it was pleasing to David to form a marriage alliance with the king." End quote for a moment. I mean, come on. Elders, princes in the new system. We had so much problem with dating and chaperones. What did you have to deal with? David then says, quote, "Before the allotted time, David went with his men and struck down 200 Philistine men, and David brought the full number, he brought the full number of their foreskins to the king to form a marriage alliance with the king. Therefore, Saul gave him his daughter Michal as a wife." End quote. Those princely meetings in paradise are going to reveal some interesting things right there in the Bible. The modern day elder, a prince on par with King David, might complain about picking up the dinner tab or having to bring a sister flowers when he asks her out, or having to ask the elders to use the kingdom hall for their wedding day. But damn, bro, brother David, you had to chase 200 guys and cut off their foreskins to get the girl? That's next level courtship. Wow, were they dead or alive when you whipped out that dull knife? I gotta know. What did you carry those foreskins in when you gave them back to Saul? What did that smell like? Why 200? 150 foreskins wasn't enough for Saul? Did you wash your hands after? Did you see anything, did you see anything that you were cutting from that made you feel like, less of a man? I mean, come on, we're all different. And finally, what the hell was Saul doing with men's foreskins? Did he have a cook-off? Couldn't you have just negotiated to cut off pinky fingers or something instead? Nope, it has to be the foreskins. If you thought dating was tough and the elders having to deal with all kinds of things that happen on dates compared to what David dealt with when he just wanted to date Michal, think again. There is clearly a reason I won't be invited into the Jehovah's Witness paradise. By the way, I'm going to make everyone really uncomfortable with my questions. But listen, at least I gave you all a break from Noah this week. Nonetheless, old guys and modern guys will be serving as princes on the paradise earth in the future. making for some really incredible conversations over their grilled asparagus at dinner time. It's going to be amazing. We heard Bathsheba was gorgeous, then we saw her and we're kind of puzzled. She's not quite as cute as I, saw in the Bible Stories book. Ugh. If you ever want a real world look at elders, speak privately to their family. Some of my most difficult memories are listening to teenagers speaking to me privately about their fathers and my fellow elders. Very uncomfortable. I'm not going to share stories out of respect, and it's just so yucky. But needless to say, it's difficult to listen and then sit at the next meeting watching them give talks on stuff they weren't doing themselves according to their kids, or sometimes even much, much worse. It's a horrible thing to deal with. With all of that said, outside of the governing body or the circuit overseer, there is perhaps no more polarizing group of men among God's chosen people than your local body of elders. And yes, there are, I want to emphasize it, some really good ones, good guys. But just as honestly, most just aren't very engaged with being a good shepherd and all that it entails. To be a truly effective, loving shepherd or elder, I'm going to be straight up honest here. It's almost impossible. It can be overwhelming for a guy who really wants to be good at it. And the governing body knows this. Recently, from the September Watchtower of 2023 on page 29, we are told this, quote, Peter surely never forgot what Jesus told him after his resurrection. Shepherd my little sheep. If you are an elder, you know those instructions apply to you too. It can be challenging, though, for an elder to find the time to care for this important assignment. Elders must first care for their own families, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. They also take the lead in the preaching work, as well as in preparing and presenting parts at meetings, assemblies, and conventions. Some also have responsibilities as members of the hospital liaison committees or accept assignments with the local design construction department. Elders are truly busy men. End quote. Yeah. In past episodes, I shared my weekly schedule in my 11 years as an elder. It was insane. I look back now and can't even believe I was doing it. And I thought I was doing it all for the right reasons. I love this reference, this paragraph from the September 23 Watchtower for so many real reasons. They include a long list of things that the organization requires of elders: meetings, assemblies, conventions, hospitals, construction, preaching. Fellas, where is the handing out hugs section? Did you notice it wasn't in there? It's not in there. They're called shepherds, but they're really, they're there to serve the interests of 11 men in upstate New York as they continue building a publishing real estate empire, and as of recently, some new movie studios. Handing out a hug in private, outside of any organizational arrangement? Yeah, not so much. And the guys that do get burnt out fast. They get exhausted because the friends, I can't believe I just said that, because the people in their congregation, they seek them out because they know they're going to get a warm hug, whether it's physically getting a hug or just some encouragement. But the guys in the organization, for the most part, that serve on bodies of elders, they're part of a sales team. And in that reference, they just admitted it. Watchtower, September 2023, page 29. Not a single mention in the entire paragraph of just loving people. It's insane. And most people will overlook it. They'll see the long list of all the things they do, and it sounds a lot like a job description from corporate America. So considering all of this, and there is so much more, I know I'm long-winded. I warned you it was a ramble. why in the world would I be here recommending this week that every Jehovah's Witness male aspire to being an elder? Yeah, I recommend it. I highly recommend it. But like what? It's not going to be enough to hold on until paradise so you could ask Jonah what it was like not breathing for 3 days inside that fish. It's a weird thing. Nah, this is 2025. Jehovah's Chariot is constantly changing. The demands for shepherds go well beyond making sure people are just okay. A Jehovah's Witness elder today may find himself dealing with hideous things like child abuse issues in his congregation. He may find himself dealing with things like the liability of any and all things you may have said to a victim, possibly in the future being on full display in a court of law. If you don't believe this, I use it a lot. It's a few years old now, but go back and watch the brutal testimonies of congregation elders at the Australian Royal Commission. It is brutal. It was so uncomfortable to watch, and I'm not going to lie, I remember his face, not his name. There was actually a couple elders. I have never laughed so hard. They were so uneducated and so clueless. So why in the world would I recommend a Jehovah's Witness man sign up for the position of elder? And make no mistake, the grown men out there think that this is a massive privilege. They think it is unbelievable that I've been chosen. They're told they're chosen by Jehovah, after all. So you may be walking around thinking, I got a lot of issues nobody knows about, but then Jehovah chose me. It must be okay. There's so much psychology to this. But these men get appointed to elders, and I recommend it. But I'm going to sum up why I feel this way. I'm going to sum it up the best I can with a quote I really like. And it comes from Brazilian writer Paulo Coelho. I'm sure people know him. He's the author of books such as The Alchemist and 11 Minutes. Very interesting reads. But I love this one quote he said, and it sums up why every Jehovah's Witness male should try to be an elder. He said, quote, "The only way to make the right decision is to find out which is the wrong decision, to examine that other path without fear, and only then decide." End quote. In my opinion, and yes, it's mostly based on my own experience, there is not a greater way for a male to wake up to what the organization of Jehovah's Witnesses really is than to be appointed as an elder. Becoming an elder or a person of position inside this organization gives you next level insight and access. Sure, not everyone needs that, but many do, particularly men raised in this organization. And I'll say particularly me, who have the office of elder dangled before them from childhood. It's very important that those men try to aspire to be an elder. The organization even encourages women. This is how highly sought after eldership is in this organization. They encourage women, which outnumber the men 10 to 1. That's an exaggerated, but there's many more women and sisters. They're encouraged to be looking for a brother who is holding a title of elder or sometimes ministerial servant to be a prospective husband. And they still encourage this. From the December Watchtower of 2023, pages 18 through 23, we are told, quote, the sisters are told, that is, quote, "So ask yourself, is he a mature Christian? Is he putting spiritual interests first in his life? Does he make wise decisions? Can he admit his mistakes? Does he respect women? Does he have the skills needed to support me spiritually, materially, and emotionally? Does he handle responsibility well? Pay close attention. For example, what congregation assignments does he have and how does he handle them? End quote. The low-key endorsement for sisters to find a guy that's got privileges and a title in the congregation of Jehovah's Witnesses. And look, I think we should all celebrate. At least Jehovah no longer requires us to get 200 foreskins if we see a cute girl or a cute sister we want to date. So there's at least that, right? That's a good thing, I think. So much I could do with that. Let's leave it alone. But again, the emphasis on position, with elder being the top title in a local congregation, is very much encouraged. Even the sisters are encouraged to find one for a husband, and which, of course, just makes their dating pool that much more of a nightmare. Subject for another time. But when a man becomes an elder, his life changes dramatically. In most cases, he goes from ministerial servant, which has a lot of the work, the logistics, all the stuff, without any of the perks, to a full-time job as an elder that includes an endless amount of anxiety. And no, I am not kidding. Even I didn't realize the pressure and anxiety I felt. There was times I did. I guess that's dishonest or not accurate. But for the most part, you don't realize it because you believe you're slaving for Jehovah. That was my observation with men who took the role seriously. Once appointed, you suddenly have something you didn't have just a few days ago. You have full access to life behind the curtain in this organization. And I'm here to tell you, depending on the age when you're appointed, it can be shocking. It quickly becomes exhausting, not going to lie. And I found that it's this singular change in a J-dub man's life that can quickly bring him to his senses on all things Jehovah's Witnesses. And I'm telling you, it's a crossroads that's incredibly critical because, as we know, the obvious. Some men wake up to things, others just double down. Troubling indeed. But allow me to explain. The fact that you're suddenly thrust into a world you've had no access to before is jarring. The change from ministerial servant to elder is dramatic, and that's typically how it goes. I'm sure most people know that. And sure, you can get some rare insights into things like congregation finances as the accounting servant, and that does raise a few eyebrows once you see it, let me tell you. I was pretty stunned at how the money flows and works. And yes, if you're a mature ministerial servant, you may even be invited on shepherding calls with an elder that has taken a real liking to you. He wants to mentor you, giving you the kind of exposure to private problems that you hadn't had before. Someone may dump on you when you visit their home. Out of nowhere, they see you as a spiritual guy, you're with the elder. But nothing, and I mean nothing in my opinion, prepares you for life as an elder. I look back on my appointment at 27 years old and realize in hindsight that I was being pushed into the position from a much younger age. I look back to how it all started. As a young ministerial servant, I had a flaky book study conductor, wonderful guy, didn't really want to do the job, who didn't even like to show up to the book study. So I was constantly getting the call on Tuesday or Monday, and I ended up conducting the book study a lot as a young ministerial servant. This was only made more fun by the fact that it was the Revelation Climax book that I got to cut my teeth on as a teacher. Good times. Studying that hilariously bad book each week raised more than a few questions in my own mind, including page 173, I can't forget it, claiming that Jehovah was in Detroit, Michigan, talking trash to Satan via a convention part in 1928. I'll never forget that. Wow, Jehovah made an appearance in Detroit, all for Satan. Don't even get me going on that book. See past episodes. But aside from basically taking over elder duties at the book study, I was contacted in the beginning on a Saturday night by one of our elders who asked me to stand in for him as the guest speaker and give the public talk in another congregation. I can't even tell you, I thought I had arrived. This was the coolest thing ever. I was scared out of my mind, but this was the opportunity every JW male has been waiting for. I ended up giving the Sunday talk, and I don't think that congregation even had a clue that I was a ministerial servant and not an elder. Nobody told them. Big no-no back in the day. But I gave the talk. Yeah, ministerial servants didn't give away talks in other kingdom halls or congregations back then. So it was a big no-no, but I pulled it off. And I mean to tell you, that was the beginning. Suddenly, the Holy Spirit descended from the heavens, and boom, I went from a young guy handing out the Watchtower and Awake at the literature counter to a future prince on a paradise earth soon to arrive. And for this 27-year-old guy, that is when the real fun began. All the romance, all the years of daydreaming, all the warm, fuzzy stuff I had built in my head up to this point in my life about being an elder, about the congregation, the organization, quickly, and I do mean quickly, evaporated. I realize that I'm rambling and I'm just sharing my own experience. However, it must be said that it is difficult to describe what happens to a guy when he finds out exactly what this organization is all about. Now, I want to say here, I might have been naive. I was naive. Some guys go into the job knowing this stuff. I did not. I was on the other side of the fence. And despite how painful or shocking it can be, I highly recommend it to all male Jehovah's Witnesses for this very reason. Your inclusion into the Elders Club gives you an all-access pass to all the things a regular publisher or even a ministerial servant doesn't have. I want to share some of the things that impacted me and why I support you becoming an elder. But first, the disclaimer for the apologists that might be listening in to this week today. There are good men among Jehovah's Witness elders, saying it for the third time, men who take the role seriously, including loving, hospitable, and knowledgeable guys. I will always be fond of some of those men who had a very real impact on my life. However, even those men get worn down and burnt out. Aren't you excited to be an elder? So with that disclaimer out of the way, I'll just say I didn't find that to be the majority of Jehovah's Witness elders. And the responsibilities thrust on these men and how they handle them were a huge wake-up call for me. And I truly want every Jehovah's Witness male who's on the fence or has some questions to have the same wake-up call. When I started seeing things that made me uncomfortable, it basically started here. Consider the first thing that I encountered as a young elder that was really tough for me to swallow and dismiss. Consider what the organization says about the character of who should be an elder. From the Watchtower, September 15th, 1993, page 20, we're told, oh boy, quote, hence, shepherding is a rigorous life, requiring the services of a man who is brave, diligent, and resourceful. Most of all, he must have the capacity to show genuine concern for the flock entrusted to his care. End quote. While a publisher attending meetings may see the elders in their mind's eye as brave, diligent, and resourceful, for many, once they're appointed an elder and in private meetings with other elders, I'm here to tell you, you may just see something else entirely. And frankly, it really troubled me. It's an impossible, brutal job by the governing body's standards. Nonetheless, Jehovah's Witness men sign up for it. And we're told they are very brave. And well, I think many Jehovah's Witnesses would be surprised how some of the conversations go about genuine concern for the flock and for individual sheep. I did not meet a lot of brave elders. I'm going to be honest. Sorry, that's the facts. However, I did meet a lot of men that could do the following, forever blowing up my vision of what being a shepherd and elder really meant. From the same September 15th, 1993 Watchtower, we're told, quote, Jesus set the perfect example for all who would shepherd Jehovah's flock. In every way, he was loving, kind, compassionate, and helpful to his disciples. He took the initiative to search out those in need. Though Jesus was busy and was often tired, he always took time to listen to their problems and to give them encouragement. His willingness to surrender his soul in their behalf was the ultimate expression of love. Today, all appointed congregation elders, as well as ministerial servants, share this responsibility toward the flock. End quote. Those elders that were actively seeking others in need of help was the minority. Period. That's my experience. Surrendering their soul on people's behalf, forget about it. Come on. In fact, coupled with the earlier paragraph claiming elders are brave, it paints a picture every JW man should see for himself, because it just isn't true. And he can only see it at its worst, and that's when he himself is an elder. At some point, I'll have to share my personal exit story. I've been meaning to. It's just so long-winded. But one of the most critical catalysts to me waking up and leaving the organization was the cowardice of my fellow elders. It was so jarring to me. The lack of character, the lack of discernment, and finally, how they just flat out ignored the Bible. The Bible didn't even come into play. They were anything but brave, especially in the face, in my circumstances, to a bully circuit overseer who was just a clown. They never tapped into honor, honesty, or compassion. No, they tapped into the rules made by a man-made organization. They were much more concerned about their positions and their own standings and titles. And I got to tell you, this isn't me grinding an axe. It sounds like it, but it's not. Far too long ago, well over all of this. But it is me telling the truth and why I want other men inside that organization to aspire to be elders. This is how you see what goes on behind the curtain. And elders are not brave. I saw several of them sacrifice their children's well-being to keep their title. And it wasn't a unique experience. This is a fairly common problem inside the elder arrangement. I was so troubled by what I was seeing at first, and I became guilty of it myself. I became guilty of it. But I had this romantic vision in my head of what it meant to shepherd and protect Jesus' precious sheep. And well, I didn't see a lot of it going on. All of this, despite the organization claiming that elders were divine protectors who embraced and took the initiative, as the Watchtower said, to care for any and all inside the congregation. Who can forget the Watchtower articles and all the talks built around Isaiah 32:1 and 2? Remember that one? Oh, yeah. The Bible's romantic language applied to Jehovah's Witness elders in the 21st century. Didn't you know that? This is what the prophet Isaiah said, and he had elders in mind, by the way. He'll also be a prince with them in paradise. At Isaiah 32:1 and 2 of the New World Translation, the famous verse says, "Look, a king will reign for righteousness, and princes will rule for justice. And each one will be like a hiding place from the wind, a place of concealment from the rainstorm, like streams of water in a waterless land, like the shadow of a massive crag in a parched land." End quote. Very romantic, very brave. Men protecting us from the elements, from all that is wrong in this world. The Watchtower went on to apply these verses like this. From 2002, February 15th, Watchtower, page 23, we're told, quote, "The prophet Isaiah explained that princes would be appointed by God, and each one would serve as a hiding place from the wind. Under the direction of the King, Christ Jesus, these spiritual princes or overseers would be like stable rocks, firm in times of stress or affliction. They would offer reliable shelter in the face of adversity and help needy ones to safeguard their reserves of spiritual water from God's word." End quote. Superheroes. Men who care for us beyond what words can describe, protecting us from the elements, from Satan, his demons, and everything else. Straight talk. There were men that did take this seriously. Most don't. Most didn't. I witnessed guys, fellow elders, complaining about having to make another shepherding call on someone who dealt with serious depression. We got to call on them again? Typically, these are conversations you can only see when you're an elder and you're behind closed doors in an elders meeting, with the rest of the congregation thinking the elders keep their superhero capes, that they're in their book bags until they need to pull them out and put them on. This sounds so damn negative, I know, but candidly, it needs to be said. And I know everyone's got an elder story. You rarely hear good ones, you mostly hear the bad ones. I know. But I'll tell you, this thought that they're brave, resourceful, that they take the initiative, that they provide shelter for those undergoing adversity, needy ones, or feel protected by them. Folks, I've never seen a group of grown men look at their laps faster than when the elder leading the meeting, it was the presiding overseer back in the day, said something like, Sister so-and-so needs another shepherding call. Boom, in unison, heads down, everyone hoping that they're not the one to get chosen. I saw it. Can't be denied, I was there. And I know it's not unique. And for a Jehovah's Witness male who took all these romantic verses in the Bible and these Watchtower articles so seriously, and they aspired to be an elder, it's a jolt to the senses. In my time as an elder, I found elders to be very reactive, not proactive. And well, let's be honest, when compared to a shepherd, that blew up my vision of the entire arrangement. In other words, you could see a sheep has left the flock and it's walking toward a cliff, but the elders waited until after they fell off the cliff before yelling down to them about how stupid their decision was. And I can see you're all broken up and on death's door. By the way, that's a bummer. And it's even worse. We're going to have to discipline you and announce it to everyone in the congregation. That is what you see as an elder. I witnessed people being virtually ignored, left to sit in their social loneliness, same seat, same aisle in the Kingdom Hall, week after week, until that same person got involved with a non-Jehovah's Witness. Then the elders were all over them and weren't afraid to administer discipline that altered that person's lives. It was mostly sisters. I witnessed a lot of personal opinions coming into play with other people's lives and decisions. The reference I just read mentioned elders being brave, diligent, and resourceful. I didn't meet a lot of elders that were very resourceful with their own Bibles, unless they were reading from a Watchtower publication or the Society's outlines. Once the sheep were skinned and knocked about, I would then see the elders giving that person attention. It was all very reactive, not very proactive. And I realized that apparently Jesus chose guys that would wait until the sheep was bloody and ripped apart before doing anything. about the wolves. You see this on steroids when you're an elder. But I didn't notice most of this until I was that elder. Sure, you see it in the congregation. People aren't stupid. They're very smart. But when you become an elder, you get the deets, the details. And if you take the responsibility seriously, you will notice this too. As that 1993 Watchtower I read earlier said, quote, they have genuine concern. They're brave, diligent, resourceful, end quote. I'm going to let you be the judge on whether that's true or not. But for a Jehovah's Witness male that might be listening, become an elder and fasten your seatbelt. The other reality that a common Jehovah's Witness male isn't exposed to is the world of, we'll call it candid conversation you can only get from an elders meeting. And I think it can be a game changer for a male Jehovah's Witness. While the organization likes to produce videos showing elders speaking to people like they're 6 years old, that is not a reflection of reality, folks. In recent years, elders training videos and dramatic videos showing elders feigning ignorance or working out disagreements as if Jesus is in the room with them have been rolled out to Jehovah's Witnesses. But I'm here to tell you, once you're an elder, you know it isn't true. Elders meetings can get heated. They get uncomfortable. They feature men not wanting to accept certain assignments. They feature guys disagreeing on who the next elder should be, even questioning other people's spirituality. I had them questioning people in my family as to whether they were going sideways and apostatizing or not, while I sat in the room. I can only dream of watching these newly appointed 21-year-old guys sitting there having their minds blown when he realizes some of these guys don't obviously show their real personalities when they're out front of the general congregation. You get to see them at their best in elders meetings. And you got to be an elder to get in. I'm not going to spend time reading the well-known qualifications for an elder. We all know them. You can review that in their instruction manual known as the Bible. You can find it at 1 Timothy 3, 1-7 of the New World Translation. Needless to say, the guy that puts on his dating profile probably isn't getting a date if he's using 1 Timothy 3, 1-7. It is truly the antithesis of a bad boy description. It's the opposite. It's all the character traits you would apply to somebody like Captain America. And when you read 1 Timothy 3, 1-7, what it means to be an elder, no one can add up to those. They can't. But don't you think a Jehovah's Witness elder who's got people's lives in his hands should at least get close? Should they at least get close? Once a J-Dub male is appointed as an elder, he has access to the men behind the mask. And look, this may sound unbalanced because all of us have stuff we aren't particularly proud of about ourselves. But I'm holding these men to the same standards they hold other non-elder men in the congregation. Remember, they get to judge them. For example, this was what pops into my mind. I served on 2 committees that absolutely blew my mind. Both had to do with a baptized male and alcoholism. Both of these men were clearly abusive alcoholics and abusing their wives. That's why we were in the back school having a judicial meeting. I sat with my fellow elders who were judging him and laying down discipline. And you're thinking, well, okay, they did what they're supposed to do, Stacy. Yeah, but here's the catch. I'd been with these men more times than I could remember, and I'm pretty sure they too were alcoholics. Yeah. But they were in a position now to judge these other 2 men on how much they drank. And by the way, painfully as I remember, their wives were alcoholics too. Their wives were notorious, frankly. And it was only as an elder that I sat front row to all the hypocrisy. What are we doing in this room judging these two guys when the guys doing the judging got the same problem? So for a JW male that's on the fence seeing this stuff that you can only see in private, it's oftentimes the thing that wakes him up. It's a jolt to the senses, and it's very hard to dismiss. So while my list of reasons is long as to why I invite and encourage every Jehovah's Witness male to become an elder, I'm going to try to narrow it down to just a couple more in this thing. Nowhere in the organization will you see double standards than with elders. Yeah, you can see it growing up. You can see it in the congregation overall, especially when it comes to how other people view your spirituality or such innocuous things such as economics, who has money and who doesn't. You can see some double standards, some partiality. But nowhere, in my opinion or my experience, were double standards more in play than with elders. Let me give you an example, and I'm trying to be really careful here. This is an appalling story that hits way too close to home, and I'm going to leave it at that for anyone that may know me. I was involved in a judicial matter. I was informed by someone's mother, a young sister's mother, that her daughter had been sleeping with someone that I knew well and I was close to. I confronted him. He and his wife were very well liked, still are to my knowledge, are charming people. You could see they were very popular in social circles. I'm not going to go into details, but due to our own close friendship that spanned years, I had to recuse myself from the judicial committee, but was still involved because I was the guy that learned all the dirty details, mostly from a third party. The presiding overseer, who I was close to, also liked his brother and this wife very much. They even threw anniversary parties for them and stuff. In a stunning move that continues to haunt me to this day, the presiding overseer, because I was recused, remember, decided that this brother, who had been sleeping with the other sister, would not face a judicial committee and instead would be, quote, reproved before all onlookers. So he gathered up a few people that he had heard were gossiping about it, took them all into the B school. That included me and my wife because we knew about it, won't go into details. And he told those in the B school, this situation with so-and-so here to my right has been handled. I'd like you all to shut up now. We were talking about adultery. The entire congregation knew about this situation, but it didn't matter. The elders wiped their hands of it and moved on. They just moved on. And it haunts me to this day. It was devastating to everyone else in that congregation. A young sister, an older guy, kids were involved. Everybody knew about it. But this is how the presiding overseer, with me in attendance and no judicial committee, decided to handle it. In no other circumstances or with any other common publisher in our congregation would this have been allowed, but here it was. And I'm here to tell you the congregation was buzzing. The looks at meetings were bad, and the married couple eventually moved away with the younger sister he was involved with staying. And I heard just recently he may now be an elder himself. And I look back on that incident, and it would never happen with anyone else in that congregation. It was overt double standards. It was overt partiality. It was overt favoritism. And it was awful. And I was absolutely love this person. Probably hate me if they get wind of this. But I still can't believe it. And I no longer care about the absurdity of the elder arrangement, not personally. It's like caring about an all-boys club that you were in at 8 years old that your neighborhood pals made up. That's what the elder arrangement really is, folks. It's just a corporate tool for the governing body. But the double standards you witness as an elder, in this case, that's an example that comes to my mind, were unnerving to me. When you couple this with the countless examples of elders whose own children sinning over and over and over again, all without them being disfellowshipped or dealt with, And I could tell you stories that would ramble for hours. I don't even want to. I'm kind of uncomfortable I told that one. But meanwhile, I was on a judicial committee where a single sister got involved with a guy at work. No one knew about it, not a person. The other two guys voted to axe her. She was disfellowshipped. This was on the heels of the story I just told. And to this day, that sister's never returned to my knowledge and has been long forgotten by the organization. No one tries to go find her. The partiality and the double standards between who knows who got away with what, how we're going to sweep this one under the rug because I'm pals with them, is unbelievable. It really is. All of this despite the countless reminders from the organization to never show partiality. Not for an elder. From the Live with Jehovah's Day in Mind brochure, page 80, we're told, quote, "How might an elder's thinking be similarly affected? What if the person he is dealing with has been generous to him in the past? Or what if the elder foresees some possible benefit in the future? Or suppose the case is handling involves someone related to him by blood or by marriage. Will family ties or spiritual principles win out? An elder's impartiality could be affected when he is handling a case of wrongdoing or weighing whether another is scripturally qualified for additional privileges of service in the congregation." End quote. Saw it with my own eyes, was involved in several examples, one nasty one I just shared. I went after that PO privately so many times on that one. So many times. And today, if that other guy is an elder, I hear he is, they just justify it as it was all okay with Jehovah. Look at him now. It's incredible. Congregation was absolutely on fire with that one. A newer elder will likely see all of this double standard partiality stuff in real time when looking to appoint a new elder or ministerial servant. If he's ignored what I just shared, but now it comes time to appoint someone, oh boy. I'll never forget it. The first time we were in there considering a new elder or ministerial servant, at least for me, I was 27. I grew up believing there was some deep spiritual process to choosing the next shepherd. The claim Jehovah and Jesus are in the room where two or three are gathered together, that the Holy Spirit is flowing and the angels are applauding, just out of sight, of course. We all believe that. At least I did. And I wonder why I would believe that. From the How to Remain in God's Love book, page 53, paragraph 16, the governing body tells all witnesses, but especially elders, quote, "So how are they selected? These brothers must meet the qualifications found in the Bible, 1 Timothy 3. Jehovah used Holy Spirit to help Bible writers explain these qualifications. The elders pray to Jehovah for his Holy Spirit when discussing who should be appointed as an elder or a ministerial servant. Clearly, the congregations are under the direction of Jesus and Jehovah." End quote. Yes, clearly they are. It's very clear. It's as clear as mud. Looky there. Well, until you're an elder. Until you're an elder in that room and you witness the real process for appointing others. I'm here to tell you there is absolutely zero spirituality in that process. Reading the Bible's qualifications, praying, and then discussing the verses, how do I say this? The reality hits you real hard as a new elder. It's a lot like reading a medical book, praying over a guy you think should be a doctor, and well, voila, he's now a doctor. Just like that. That's how it works. In my day, the only factor in appointing a new elder or servant came down to their field service average. When at the time, the national average was about 10 hours here in the United States. If he didn't have that, we're not even going to talk about him. Somebody turn off that Holy Spirit. It's really flowing. If he had made that mark, if he hadn't murdered anyone, hadn't slept with anybody, he was a decent speaker and was willing to lighten the other guy's workload, and by the way, was popular, boom. Let's appoint this guy. We got ourselves a new shepherd. That's it. No mystery. But for someone who was hooked on the romance and what they had been taught until they're in the room as an elder themselves, it is jarring. If you're a Jehovah's Witness male, you only see this once you're in the club. And if you doubt that, I'm telling the truth here, become an elder. I'm encouraging it. And when this happens, lean over to the guy next to you and ask him if he felt any special tingling of Holy Spirit, or maybe an angel tapped him on the shoulder or whispered in his ear. Did something happen for you? No? Yeah, me neither. Nope. How about a quick mention of one more thing that really jarred me as an elder? Confidentiality is an urban myth, and it is always at risk. Once you are an elder, you will be met with how much the other elders tell you things. They whisper in your ear a lot. From the March 1st, 1997 Watchtower, page 28, elders are told, quote, "What you discuss with an elder will remain strictly confidential. Being trustworthy is one of his qualifications." End quote. No, nope. No, it is not. No, it's not. Not in all cases. Sure, it's a bold statement, and one you only realize is false once you're an elder. You're now privy to things, in all honesty, that even you don't want to know. I didn't want to know this stuff. And if you think the governing body doesn't know happens and that this is a problem, despite their claims to elders, think again. From the Watchtower of November 15th, 1991, page 23, paragraph 19, the faithful slave says this, quote, "The obligation to maintain confidentiality also requires that an elder be alert to practice firm self-control. Pertinent here is the counsel, do not reveal the confidential talk of another." Experience suggests that this may be one of the most widely violated requirements among elders. If an elder has a wise and loving wife, with whom he has good communication, there may be a tendency on his part to discuss or just to mention matters of a confidential nature. But this is improper and most unwise. End quote. Oopsies. Oopsie. I laugh here, but this is not funny. It's absurd. I have to tell you that the elders' wives, know far too much about what's going on in the congregation. And in 2025, I have to wonder in this day and age if there's going to be legal repercussions to that at some point. In my congregation, we had an acronym for one of our fellow elders. It was AT, then his first initial. Not going to reveal it here for anyone who may know me. It stood for according to so-and-so. Yeah, because he was known for being rather generous with people's private information. That's putting it nicely. But how about the governing body admitting in the November 15th, 1991 Watchtower, paragraph 19, that they know that this is the most widely violated requirement among elders? Yeah. And you know this in a completely different light when you are an elder, which is why I'm promoting and encouraging all J-Dub males become an elder. The insights are priceless. But finally, I recommend every Jehovah's Witness brother become an elder for this reason. You will see it as not an organization based on spiritual things. It is not a theocracy. It is most definitely a corporation. But they never pitch that to the common Jehovah's Witness. From Worship the Only True God, page 129, paragraph 5, the governing body says, quote, "The organization is theocratic, or God-ruled. Jehovah provides direction for his people through Jesus, the one he appointed to be the invisible head of the congregation, and by means of his own inspired word, the Bible." End quote. I'm going to boldly say that a common Jehovah's Witness is fairly ignorant as to the organization's reality. I was. They get onto that weekly hamster wheel and they do their very best to stay on it. But rarely do Jehovah's Witnesses look beneath the surface. Once a man is an elder, he is often forced into a reality he has never considered before. And that reality includes a corporation, run like a corporate entity, complete with distinct hierarchical structure, lots of committees and branch offices overseeing administrative and worldwide operations. If they're paying attention to all the letters sent out of New York, they soon realize that they're hyper-focused on managing finances and acquiring property, even as they give the public talk on how Armageddon is looming and is just seconds away. You grew up as a J-Dub male on Bible stories, only to be thrust into the reality that Jesus has legal entities telling you how to judge others or deal with local governments and law enforcement. Yeah, they have a legal department. It's the fastest growing one in New York. Many never consider the ongoing layers of management. They call it shepherding. They use cute words. That exists in this multi-billion-dollar organization. Elders' meetings center around secular activities with the kingdom hall itself, the building, what events are happening there, the preaching work, and how to record time. That was the thing back in the day, or how to track who's doing what. The micromanagement. Consoling others, being brave, diligent, resourceful, like the Watchtower says, it's way down the list of priorities. Popularity reigns. You see it in the meetings. And all of this has only gotten worse since I left the organization. Often overlooked is that the entire operation is built inside and out as a corporation. A corporation an elder comes in greater contact with once he's appointed as an elder. From the Watchtower of March 15th, 1990, page 18, paragraph 14, we are told, quote, "The Watchtower Bible and Tract Society of Pennsylvania has a board of directors limited to 7 members. These dedicated Christian men are elected for 3-year terms by corporation members totaling no more than 500, the majority of whom are not anointed Christians. Moreover, since the corporation's existence is purely legal, with a fixed geographic headquarters, it can be dissolved by Caesar, that is, the state." End quote. How many Jehovah's Witnesses consider this? As a man, you may think, I'm going to dedicate my life to the organization, to Jehovah. You thought you escaped corporate America, as they say. Think again. There's nothing spiritual about this organization. It's a poorly run company where guys that spend the most time standing in front of a book cart get appointed to shepherd the rest of us. In other words, it's a lot like that term, middle management. That's what an elder is. And I'll leave this here for another time. If you thought human resources was a department to be feared in your company, check out the 11 Kings in upstate New York. They make the HR department look kind of nice and sweet by comparison. Before you excitedly accept this job, thinking it's a special privilege, you may want to consider a harsh reality no one is going to tell you about being a Jehovah's Witness elder. You're not going to hear this when they come to you. You're not going to get a letter. No one's going to talk to you about it unless they're an old veteran elder who almost feels sorry for you. But consider this if you are a man listening who wants to become a Jehovah's Witness elder on all things corporate organization. Recently, a United Kingdom Supreme Court case and other legal precedents have established that elders within Jehovah's Witnesses are considered akin to employees for the purpose of applying, are you ready for this? Vicarious liability. This means that the organization can be held responsible for their actions even if they are not formally employed. In the cases of child sex abuse, Jehovah's Witnesses have faced numerous lawsuits related to abuse, with victims alleging that elders failed to report abuse or take appropriate action. Hold on tight here if you're a brother. In some cases, quote, in some cases, the organization has been held liable for damages, and elders have been convicted of child sexual assault, end quote. Yeah. You thought you would hand out some pointers on their last talk, give them some counsel. But you're in line for being charged with child sexual assault if you don't have your act together as a Jehovah's Witness elder, or you dismissed something they said, or you followed the organization's direction. You can be held personally responsible for litigation and be convicted of sexual assault of a child, all because you took that shepherding call. One of many reasons I encourage men to think about this office of elder that is seen as such a privilege by Jehovah's Witnesses. I literally shudder at how many times I saw ignorant, ill-prepared, 10-hour-a-month publisher guys that were now elders dropping the ball on very serious things. There is so much more I could share on this subject, but I'm going to pull the plug right here. Those are some of my top reasons every Jehovah's Witness male should become an elder. You should become an elder. Check it out from the inside. It reminds me of a quote that I really like, and it comes from a Nigerian author, Michael Bassi Johnson, a philosopher, very interesting guy, when he said, quote, "I'm always angry about the death of people who are still alive. Their eyes are open, yet they can't see anything. The spell of ignorance," end quote. They call it a privilege to be a Jehovah's Witness elder. And it is. It's truly a privilege few get. I'm encouraging you to embrace it. Becoming an elder may be the very thing that saves your life. I want to thank you for being here this week. Wherever you may be well.